What's up, y'all? You're listening to the My Aggie Nation podcast. I'm Alex Miller, joined always by the one and only Robert Cessna Cease. No colorful Hawaiian shirt today?
Kind of one of those deals. I didn't know we were done the podcast. I'd have dressed down if that was the case. But I had my work clothes on kind of day. Nowhere to go, no game to cover. Just try to get some work done in the office, hopefully.
Well, we were supposed to record this yesterday, but... You know,
technical difficulties.
Genius 1 and Genius 2 couldn't figure out some things. We got a little help. We got it all straightened out. We still can't get the TV on. But, look, we're bringing you the content. It's technically a podcast, so you really just need to listen to it. You don't want to look at our faces anyway, probably.
True.
So, hey, let's get to the stuff that people came for. Let's start with some basketball talk, of course. Texas A&M men, they are in the SEC tournament this week in Nashville. We're recording this in the middle of the Texas-Vanderbilt game. Texas was winning by 15 at halftime, so looking like we're going to get Aggies horns in the Music City Thursday afternoon, Cease.
Well, it's when you go into these tournaments that don't mean a lot, but anytime you toss a ball up or throw a ball, the adrenaline takes over, and particularly if you're talking about a rivalry game. And I guess I'm old. When I see these, I just hope no one gets hurt because I don't want to see anybody get hurt. But you just don't play for fun. And sometimes if you try not to get hurt, then you're going to get hurt. So you think about, come on, A&M and Texas play in anything. There's going to be a great desire to win that game, particularly when they split the first two games. In a perfect world, A&M wins that game, then see what happens. Because I've been here so many times when we knew A&M was not going to the NCAA tournament. So that's March mundane because everybody wants to be part of March Madness. Then I went through the times when, okay, they might make, they might not. What are they going to do in a tournament? So then you've got at least 1 week of excitement to see what happens. But when A&M is in this situation where you know they're going to go to the tournament, you know they're going to be a top 4 seed at worst and hopefully a top 3 seed actually at worst. We don't know that. What a great place to be in mentally to know not only you part of March Madness, people are talking about you.
It's going to be a fascinating matchup tomorrow if results hold and Texas is the opponent. Because, look, Texas is square on the bubble. They are on the outside looking in. They may need to win the whole tournament to even make the field and get the automatic berth. They can't keep you out if you win the conference tournament. I do know that. But right now, Texas playing for their life. They were able to erase that 22-point lead against A&M in Austin. I mean, what a crazy ending to that game. And on A&M's side, you're thinking, okay, what is A&M actually playing for in Nashville this week? Well, that's what I basically asked the guys yesterday, and they're like, look, we've come close to winning this thing 3 times the last 3 years. They want to go win it. And have the assurance of, well, they already have the assurance they're in the NCAA tournament, but look, you go home happy. If you got a chance to play for a championship, why not win it? You got John Calipari saying that who cares about the conference tournament, and Buzz Williams is like, hey, look, if ball's on the court and scores being kept, A&M's playing to win. That's gotta feel good for A&M fans knowing that, look, A&M may or may not win the conference tournament, but they're not just throwing it in and looking forward to next week when they know they're going to have more games.
I don't know. It's interesting. A&M's in a growth period. I feel even though they've been in the conference for over a decade, I think when you're a big-time conference like this in so many sports, now you have 16 powers, so to speak. We all know that the regular season means so little anymore. You look at baseball and softball, how many teams are ranked in the top 30 RPI, and we all know your final analysis is going to be measured in your postseason success. But getting back what you started, rivalries always top a lot of things. And if A&M would lose to Texas and go on and win the national championship, you would still see some Longhorns get in Aggies' faces and say, "Oh, we beat you guys 2 out of 3." And while Aggies would laugh at them and whatever, there'd be just a little bit of said, "Gee, why couldn't we have won that third game along with the national championship?"
And on the flip side, if A&M were to go and beat Texas tomorrow and probably end the Longhorn season, that's going to be pretty satisfying to a lot of people who got the gold on their right hand. And look, even if A&M went and lost the first round of the the NCAA tournament, you still ended Texas' season, which I think A&M fans don't want to lose in the first round of the NCAA tournament, but there'd be a lot of satisfaction in being able to end Texas' season.
Huge. We saw, in football, what A&M was, going into that game if they could beat Texas, and what it would matter, because it would hurt Texas. And once again, is sometimes that misery loves company. No, sometimes you like to see your opponent in misery. We're not at church on Sunday when you're out at the ball field on a Tuesday or Thursday. You want to see your rival in pain.
Well, A&M, most mock brackets have A&M as a 3 seed right now in the NCAA tournament, which would tie for A&M's highest seeding in school history. They made the Sweet 16 both times they were a 3 seed, fun fact. So that history bodes well for the Aggies in that way. Joe Lenardi, ESPN's bracketologist, he did a Zoom call this afternoon with a bunch of reporters, and my question to him was, hey, do you think A&M has locked down a 3 seed? Do you think they could move up to a 2? Could they fall down to a 4? And, he kind of, if you look at where A&M's at, them and Kentucky have very similar resumes. They're very much in the same spot. So he kind of compared both of them together and said, look, for each of them to move up to the 2 line, they're probably going to have to at least get to Sunday and play in the championship game. When you look at where things are at right now, you've got Auburn, Houston, and Duke that have pretty much locked up the 1 seeds. And then that final 1 seed's probably being played between Florida, Alabama, Tennessee, and Michigan State this week. So there's a lot to be played for in Nashville in that regard from those schools. So you got to think those are the top 7 teams at worst, right? So that leaves 1 spot left on the 2 line, which a lot of mock brackets have Texas Tech on that final spot right now. So you've got a group of schools that's like Tech, A&M, Kentucky, even Iowa State that are kind of fighting for that final 2 spot. So look, A&M's going to have to go far, and they're also going to need these other teams to pretty much go one and done if they have any chance of leapfrogging anyone, most namely Tech, for that final spot. But what Lenardi did say is it's more likely A&M would tumble should they lose tomorrow, say to Texas, or if Vanderbilt can pull off a miracle comeback. But if A&M goes ahead and wins tomorrow, you pretty much have locked up a 3 seed, which if you're A&M, you feel good, because if you could get to that Sweet 16 round, you're playing at worst a 2 seed. You don't have to play the 1 seed right off the shebang.
Yeah, it's very important, and a lot of times it's about matchups. We saw, A&M didn't match up well against Penn State. They could have almost played any other seed at that level. They'd have probably beat them, but Penn State was a bad matchups. And we don't know about that. That's the beauty of March Madness, because you immediately go to your bracket and say, what's ahead? How does that match up? Because A&M's got an MO, defense, offensive rebounding, da-da-da. So how's they going to match up? And when you're looking at some of those 2 seeds, you talked about 1 seeds, you can say A&M matches up well to almost all of them, but you got to get there. You got to avoid a hot shooting 3 team. You got to avoid the game where the officials call tight and you got a lot of people in foul trouble just because of your style. And that's, once again, the beauty of the March Madness, which starts this week. And if they play Texas tomorrow, what a way to start March Madness, because, like you said, it's just not another game. If Vanderbilt comes back, it's Vanderbilt. Yeah, A&M, Vanderbilt beat A&M at here. That means something, but you don't hang around. When's the last time you ran into a Vanderbilt graduate in Bryan College Station? You're going to run into a Texas graduate almost everywhere you go.
Well, we'll see how things shake out this week in Nashville. On the flip side, A&M women, their season is over. Cease, How would you just summarize this A&M women's basketball season, and what's the outlook of the program right now?
It's like what could go wrong did go wrong. When you stop and think about, you got to be watch about, how would I say, cry wolf. But Taylor talked right off the bat about how this team was unable to practice from the very start. They didn't have enough players to do a lot of inter-squad stuff because they had people hurt, not season-ending injuries, but hurt. Even though one did have Vanessa, so she was gone the whole year. So they only had 11 players for the whole year, and then they started out. Then they lost the A&M Corpus Christi, which was just like, just give me a V8. Like this is going to be a long year, and it was. They got a couple wins, but the bottom line was long, frustrating year on the heels of making the NCAA tournament. The problem with trying to make something go away, there's too much uncertainty because of the transfer portal. A&M's got to wait till all the people are done playing. Who's coming in? Who's going to make it better? In the old days, you could say, well, you got these 5 players coming back. You don't even know if those players are coming back. So Joni Taylor's got a lot of unknowns as she's out recruiting. How's she going to shape this team up? Because a lot of apathy set in. I talk to a lot of people because I do cover the women's, and that's the last thing you want. They have people talking about the women's basketball program that you normally don't, only because they're losing. You want to be in the limelight for winning, not losing. And right now, A&M's in the limelight, so to speak, which is not the right word to use, but everybody's talking about them for the wrong reason. That's what you don't want. You don't want people to say, like, oh, they're a good family, but their 2 sons are in prison right now. They're doing something wrong. And it's a bad situation. I feel for Joni Taylor because she's proven she's a good coach. She's proven that she's a good recruiter. She won at Georgia, beat Gary Blair a few times, but hasn't transpired at A&M. This is 3 years. And so had one good year, but she lost in the first round. So right now, a lot of eyes on the program, but not in a good way because they want better results.
To be clear, though, you do expect Joni to be back next year.
I think what you looked at when Trev Alberts has come in, what has been one of the number one things, to be conscious of spending money, getting the athletic program back on track. It's not that he doesn't want to spend money, not that he wants to compete for championships, but you got to do it in an economical way. If coaches have years left in their contracts, I don't see A&M going ahead and buying them out in any sport, and particularly women's basketball, because, okay, if you're telling me you want to get rid of Joni Taylor right now with 3 years left on her contract, okay, who are you going to go out and hire? Because that's just one thing. It looks like, Auburn fired their coach. Missouri fired their coach. They want to spend money. Arkansas right now is bringing back Mike Neighbors.
Oh, I thought he resigned.
He resigned. I don't think
he's coming back.
That happened the last couple of days because when I checked on Sunday. But they're saving their money that way. If he resigns, they probably come to an agreement. My point, getting back what I started with, A&M's not going to spend a lot of money over what they want to, and you're not going to go and get Gino Uriyama, or
they're not going to get Vic Schaefer,
and they're not going to get Vic Schaefer. And I love when people come to me and said, they should have done that at that time. Everything happens. Gary Blair, a Hall of Fame coach, he knew what he was doing. He's going to coach as long as he wants to. Vic Schaefer went out on his own. That's the way life goes. And Vic's got a great deal. He's obviously got NIL money. There's so much we don't know right now about any of the programs at A&M. I cannot tell you how much money A&M has to spend on women's basketball, which in NIL for next year, which is huge. Because how's that compared to Auburn? You'll have a new coach. How will that compare to Missouri that has a new coach? Those are the pertinent questions, unfortunately, that I can't answer, and A&M's not answering. I think they got to wait till all these class action suits and all this. There's so much unknown right now in college athletics, except A&M women's basketball fans want and they feel they demand better, and they do. Right now, I just don't know how that's going to come about.
Well, a team that is starting to turn the corner is the A&M baseball team. Look, really tough start. Injuries, the bats were cold, the weather was really cold for a lot of games. The fielding wasn't good. Starting pitching has been solid the whole season, but struggled to get run support, and then got put into tough situations that teams were able to capitalize and win some close games when you think about it. But look, last 5 games, A&M is 4-1, and I get it. They haven't played anybody that's probably going to be in Omaha. But the fact of the matter is, A&M is winning games and they're playing good baseball. And that is a good trajectory for this team to be on right now as they go into conference play against what is a red-hot Alabama team. They're 17-1, Cease, and they are explosive at the plate. So you got to feel good about, even though A&M has dealt with some struggles, they are starting to turn the corner in a lot of ways that shows a little bit of sign of optimism, at least.
I agree, but A&M, the bad thing or the good thing about being a consensus number 1, which you could say right now in Kansas men's basketball is the same thing, you carry that with you all year long. Kansas is not being mentioned in March Madness, but yet we all know Kansas is a blue blood. They were the consensus number 1 pick going in by a lot of people. A&M baseball has got 30 conference games ahead. Every time they play somebody, Alabama's coming there saying, hey, look, we're playing the team that everybody expects to win it all in Omaha a month ago. They'll get Alabama's best shot, which is good. But how does A&M respond? Do they get tight like they did against UTSA in the last game against Cal Poly or whatever? Because A&M a lot of times has not played, obviously, like a number 1 ranked team. Baseball, all sports you can say this, everybody tells you what, relax, have fun. I think that's particularly true in baseball, the only sport I played. You got to be comfortable in the plate. You got to be comfortable when that ball's hit down to third base to you. A&M has not been comfortable a lot of times. And you mentioned they're 4-1, but you're right, they beat up on inferior teams. Sometimes it's easier when you're beating somebody. Can they do that against quality competition? Because they're going to have 10 great SEC opponents, all of them. How do they get? At one time, I thought this team might, lose less than double-digit losses for the whole year. They're already at 6. So, I'm looking now, can this team go like 18-12 or better in the SEC? They just need to take baby steps. But unfortunately, they carry that number 1 tag with them. And even though you don't want to talk about it, that is tough. I feel for those guys because suddenly they've had injuries. They're not out there with the team that was projected to be number 1. That included Grahovic. That included Sorrell. I mean, that included a lot, and they're not there.
Yeah, going into the season, everybody thought A&M's big 3, of course, was going to be Jace Lavalette, Gavin Grahovic, and Caden Sorrell. And what have we seen? Grahovic is now out for the season with a shoulder injury on his non-throwing arm and had surgery last week. Sorrell's still on the shelf. Early said last night that it could be a few more weeks before he's back from that hamstring problem. And Jace Lavalette, he's been great in the field, but, is starting to get it going at the plate. He's had some bad luck hitting some really hard balls into the wind that has been blowing in at Olsen Field. He could easily have 10 home runs already. He only has 5. We say only 5. Having 5 home runs, there's a lot of guys that don't even get 5 home runs. For the season. But, for a guy that could be a 1-1 type pick, that it's been a tough start. He has not been able to hit at the rate that maybe a lot of people expected him to. He's starting to come along, though. The good news for the Aggies is that they've gotten some great performances from who have been their big 3 when you think about guys like Caden Kent, who has slid over to shortstop and really continued the success that he had at the end of last season when he filled in for Braden Montgomery. They brought in a transfer in Wyatt Hensler, who has just knocked it out of the park, both in the field and at the plate. You got a guy like Gavin Grahovic that went down, and look, Hensler's been steady Eddie at the hot corner for most of the season. He's only made like 1 error the whole year. And then You get a freshman in Terrence Keel who just finds his way on base, gets singles. I don't think he's hit a home run this season, but he leads the team in batting average at 420. And look, that just gets the job done, and he's been a key cog there in that middle of the lineup. Not to mention he's played some pretty good defense behind his hitting. So A&M is a team that is finding its way. They moved Gavin Cash to first base finally. He had played first base his whole collegiate career. They tried to put him in left field because they had a couple guys at first that they thought maybe, okay, we can do this and have these guys there, but just what first base was really a liability those first couple weeks, and they've made the change. It's worked out pretty well. Cash is starting to find his way at the plate, so A&M's just got to find a way to win this series this weekend, I think. If they can just win the series against Alabama, I think that changes the outlook on the season, because A&M's got one of the hardest SEC schedules when you consider the places they've got to go to on the road. They're going to Vanderbilt next weekend.
Well, yeah. I mean, you go there and you figure anytime you got Prager, you can beat anyone. The problem with having, by far, what I think so far has been your best pitcher go first, if you lose that game, then you're chasing it, and you've had a team that doesn't play with a lot of confidence. And, the recipe is, take 2 out of 3, at least at home of everyone, win at least one on the road, and then, that'll get you to 15-15, and then where do you pick up games? Because we've seen the SEC so hard year after year. If you get to 18-12, you're going to not only be good, you're probably going to be in a top 16 seed. And, believe it or not, it's never too early to start, because what have we seen in the past? You don't want to be chasing. You don't want to be going to Vanderbilt at 1-2, knowing if you go 1-2 again, then you're 2-4, and you're chasing. Or if you go 2-1, okay, we've taken care of business. You can feel pretty good about going to Vanderbilt with Prager pitching on Friday night. And if you get lucky and get 3-0, then you're going there with one in your pocket. And that's the way the SEC is, because as you mentioned, I'd argue that almost every schedule in the SEC is tough, unless you get Missouri on the road, because Missouri's traditionally just been really bad.
I think A&M gets them at home this year.
Yeah, and you actually want to get them on the road, if you get somebody easier. But trust me, A&M just wants to beat anybody right now, and we'll see. But, that's the beauty of the SEC in any sport. The cream does come to the top, because you play so many good teams, whether it's softball, we're seeing men's basketball. What A&M's 5th seed, and we're talking about them getting a possible number 2 seed in the country, which being in the top 8, but you're 5th in your conference. What does that say about your conference?
This isn't football.
And this is not football.
Or baseball. Or softball.
But I'm just saying is that's how strong the conference, and we knew adding Texas and Oklahoma was going to do that in all sports, because those are 2 traditional schools. When it comes to athletics, they don't want to take a backseat to anyone.
Well, speaking of softball, A&M, they got a great win Friday night against Florida. Weren't able to win one of the Saturday or Sunday games, so they dropped a series in a top 5 matchup. Cease, they go to Auburn this weekend. What's going to be the key for A&M to get that first SEC series win on the softball diamond?
The bat's got to come around a little bit. They had a bad game, bad series against Florida, and Tricia mentioned that Ford today about the fact is she's going to take it as an anomaly, because this team has scored like more than 9 runs on one account, 11 or 12 games, including the 2 games at Florida State, which is a top 10 team. So they've done it week after week. They didn't do it last week. And once again I could see suddenly their batters, to me, was a little more tense. It's the SEC. It's tough to relax sometimes when there's a lot of pressure on you. They're playing the number 3 team. They wanted to make a statement, even though they're number 5. The good news is they won 1. They probably should have won 2, but if they lost the opener, then they got swept. And then they'd have been really behind the 8 ball, so to speak. They opened up with a team that I believe will be in the College World Series. So when you start against somebody like that, it's good to know where you're at. And so they're only 2 swings away from having won a series against somebody that's going to be in Oklahoma City. But Now they're going on the road, a team that started 0-3. They need to win 1 or 2 games. So suddenly, if A&M only wins 2, they gets back to 500, but they got to at least do that because Auburn's got a new coach, former an Aggie. I mean, not a former Aggie. He is an Aggie. Chris Malaveau, how you pronounce his name. He was on a manager on the team here. So in softball, series are magnified because they only play 8 of them, and they don't play 10 like baseball. This is much more magnified about chasing or getting in front. Very important for A&M to get on the plus side. They're 1-2. They're going to Auburn. Stick at the Alabama sites. They play Alabama next week. This is a 6-game series I'm looking at. A&M needs to get over 500 because they want to be a top 8 seed when the season ends.
Well, hey, I think that's all the time we got today. Thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of the My Aggie Nation podcast. Be sure to check theeagle.com for all of our coverage on A&M sports and whatever else Cease writes and I write.
It's a great time for high school baseball starting up, softball. The town is alive, and it starts with March Madness and goes right down the line. The bottom line is great sports community.
Hey, we'll be back next week on the My Aggie Nation podcast.